Star Trek, Primitive Passenger Season 5, Episode 1. Jem'Hadar Protocol. The vastness of space stretched before the havoc, its hull an ink blot against the backdrop of unfamiliar gamma quadrant stars. Inside the ship's cavernous bridge, Nolan Mercer stood before a holographic display, his face illuminated by the ghostly blue light of countless tactical readouts. Months of high-tan run attacks had brought them to this moment, each raid carefully planned, each piece of intelligence meticulously gathered. "Lexa, status report," Nolan commanded, his voice carrying the command authority of ages. The AI's response was immediate, her tone crisp and eager. "All systems optimal, Nolan. Drone swarms are in position to move on the Dominion's Ketracel White facility on Torga 4. We're awaiting your command to initiate the Jem'Hadar protocol." Elara materialized beside Nolan, her physical form a stark reminder of how far they'd come since his awakening in the Delta Quadrant. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of determination and concern, met his. "Are you certain about this, Nolan? Escalating our attacks like this, there's no going back." Nolan's eyes hardened, memories of past wars flickering behind them. "We've been dancing around the edges for too long, Elara. It's time to put our intel to use and put the Dominion on defense." He turned back to the display, zooming in on the facility. Jem'Hadar soldiers patrolled the perimeter, unaware of the invisible net closing around them. "Lexa, commence. Operation Sunburst. Initiate the Jem'Hadar protocol on my mark." Lexa's voice took on a predatory edge. "With pleasure, Nolan. Drones are armed and ready. Targeting systems locked on all Jem'Hadar life signs." Nolan took a deep breath, the weight of what he was about to unleash settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just another skirmish. It was the beginning of a war within a war, fought on his terms, with weapons the Dominion haven't prepared for. Execute. In an instant, the space around Torga I-4 erupted into chaos. Thousands of drones blinked into existence, their sleek black forms swarming like angry insects. Before the Jem'Hadar could even raise their weapons, the air shimmered with the familiar glow of transporter beams. Jem'Hadar were transported up by the drones and transported down into the corona of Torga's sun. This is the Jem'Hadar protocol, enacted throughout all of Nolan's ships and drones. Any Jem'Hadar who finds himself in Nolan's transporters will rematerialize in the corona of the nearest star. In Nolan's eyes, without their meticulously designed clone soldiers, the Dominion was a toothless old cat, due for a good kick. On the view screen, Nolan watched as soldier after soldier vanished. The facility's defenses came to life, energy weapons lashing out at the swarm, but only a few drones were destroyed, and the self-replicating units would replenish on their own ranks after the battle. "First wave complete," Lexa reported, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "Jem'Hadar forces reduced by 73%. Commencing assault on the facility's main structure." A pause as she focused, then laughter. "The Founders are not going to like this," she chuckled. "Fuck 'em." Nolan shook his head grimly, his eyes fixed on the unfolding battle. "Let 'em come. It's time they learned there are scarier things in this galaxy than the Jem'Hadar." As the attack continued, Nolan couldn't help but feel a grim sense of satisfaction. Months of preparation had led to this moment, and now, deep in the heart of Dominion space, the real war was about to begin. The battle raged on, a symphony of destruction orchestrated by Nolan and his AI commander. Lexa's voice cut through the chaos. "Nolan, we've detected a surge of quantum fluctuations. A Dominion fleet is about to drop out of warp." Nolan's eyes narrowed, a predatory gleam flickering in their depths, as expected. "Let's show them what happens when they bring ships to a drone fight. Lexa, implement feathering maneuvers. Keep our drones moving and firing. I want those ships gutted of Jem'Hadar before they know what hit them. Weapons, propulsion, comms." Lexa repeated the mantra Nolan had taught her. When attacking warships, take out weapons for self-preservation, take out propulsion so they can't get away, then kill their comms so they can't call for help. The massive drones began to blink in and out of existence around the approaching Dominion ships, each brief appearance accompanied by a barrage of weapons fire and transport attempts. The space around the Dominion fleet erupted into a dazzling, deadly light show. Elara watched the battle unfold, her expression a mixture of awe and unease. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, recognizing the futility of voicing her concerns in the heat of battle. This was the Nolan of old, the ruthless commander who had led armadas through the Mestat Wars. For better or worse, he was in his element. As the battle raged on, the Dominion fleet's formation began to crumble. Jem'Hadar fighters exploded in brilliant flashes of light, while the larger ships sustained hit after hit from the relentless drone assault. Dominion dreadnoughts' shields are failing, Lexa reported, her voice tight with concentration, detecting multiple hull breaches. Nolan leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Focus fire on their weapon systems and engines. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. We might find a use for them later. The drones adjusted their attack pattern, their precise strikes crippling the massive Dominion vessels without obliterating them entirely. One by one, the enemy ships fell silent, drifting helplessly in space. As the last Jem'Hadar fighter winked out of existence, an eerie calm settled over the battlefield. Debris and disabled ships floated silently against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. Nolan straightened, a grim smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Enemy fleet neutralized, Lexa reported, all business as she ran through the numbers. 87,241 Jem'Hadar life signs eliminated via the protocol. Dominion vessels disabled but salvageable include 2 battle cruisers and 4, maybe 5 light attack ships. The little ones did not hold up well to weapons fire. There was a pause. Then she continued. There is a smoldering void where the facility on Torga I-4th used to be. Not a single Jem'Hadar, no escapees, no survivors. Elara finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. Nolan, with this level of destruction, the Dominion will respond. Nolan turned to her, his eyes blazing with a mix of triumph and defiance. Good. Bring it on. Every ship they send is one less to threaten the Alpha Quadrant. Let them try to fight on 2 fronts, see how that works out. Oh, Nolan, Lexa piped up. Today we destroyed approximately 7,240,000 doses of the White. It looks like they were just getting ready to ship out a big batch, maybe headed for the Alpha. That's a victory in itself, Nolan said, mostly to himself. Out-fucking-standing, he shouted. He gazed out at the field of broken ships, his voice taking on a reflective tone. This is just the beginning, Elara. We've shown them we can hit them where it hurts. Now we press our advantage. As the salvage operations continued, Nolan pored over the data they'd extracted from the Ketracel White facility. His eyes lit up as he found what he was looking for. Elara, Lexa, come take a look at this, he called out, excitement edging into his voice. Lexa leaned over. Elara walked down from the captain's chair, their attention focused on the holographic display. I've found it, Nolan said, his finger tracing a path through a star chart. A full-scale Jem'Hadar cloning facility. It's deep, into Dominion space, but with the intel we've gathered and our proof of concept with this last raid, I think we can pull it off. Elara's brow furrowed. Destroying an entire cloning facility. Nolan, that'll leave a mark. The Founders can't hide. A big mark. Lexa chimed in, her tone carrying a hint of eagerness. But it's not impossible. With our current capabilities and the element of surprise, we have a 77% chance of success. Nolan nodded, his mind already racing with plans. Those are odds I'm willing to take. Besides, we're not going to destroy it. He waited for effect. Think about it. With a functional cloning facility, we could unravel the secrets of Jem'Hadar production. We could potentially find a way to disrupt it on a massive scale. He turned to Lexa. Start analyzing the facility's defenses. I want a comprehensive battle plan within the hour. We'll need to coordinate our drones for maximum efficiency and come out of it with a fully intact facility. As Lexa set to work, Elara placed a hand on Nolan's arm. I'm missing something here, Nolan. Are you sure we shouldn't just blow it up? Why keep it? Nolan's eyes met hers, filled with determination. There's always a plan, Elara. If not always, the parrot. He turned back to the display, his voice taking on a commanding tone. All right, let's break this down. We'll need to disable their communications first, then take out their orbital defenses. The tricky part will be keeping the facility intact while we clear out the Jem'Hadar. As they delved into the planning, the excitement on the bridge was palpable. This wasn't just another raid. It was a daring heist that could turn very ugly if things went wrong. Hours later, as the Havoc and its drone armada prepared to blink to their target, Nolan stood at the center of the bridge, his posture radiating command. This is it, he announced to Elara and Lexa. Once we pull this off, the Dominion will know they're not just fighting the Federation anymore. They'll realize there's a new player in this war, one they never saw coming. With a nod to Lexa, the massive ship disappeared in a flash, ready to strike at the heart of the Dominion's war machine. As they reappeared near the cloning facility, alarms blared across the Dominion installation, but it was already too late. The battle for the future of the Gamma Quadrant had begun, and Nolan Mercer was determined to emerge victorious. Lexa, where we on Phase 1, Nolan commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Thousands of drones blinked in and out of existence, surrounding the sprawling cloning facility. Their synchronized attack overwhelmed the outer defenses in seconds, beams of energy lancing through shield generators and weapons emplacements. Comms down, outer defenses neutralized, Lexa reported, commencing Phase 2. Nolan nodded grimly. Elara, begin wide-era transport sweep. You know the protocol. As Elara worked, the scene on the view screen was one of controlled chaos. Jem'Hadar soldiers began to vanish mid-stride, their atoms then scattered into the corona of a nearby star. Nolan, Elara's voice carried a note of hesitation. I'm detecting multiple signatures of immature Jem'Hadar within the facility. Infants are still in their pods, and juveniles who are all grouped together may be training. For a split second, Nolan's expression tightened, then his eyes hardened with resolve. The protocol stands, Elara. All Jem'Hadar. No exceptions. He tapped the display to zoom in. I don't want a single strand of DNA left for the Founders to start over with. As the sweep continued, Lexa's voice cut through the tense silence. We're encountering heavier resistance near the central chambers. The last few Vorta are attempting to lock down the core systems. Not on my watch, Nolan growled. Lexa, focus drone fire on the central chamber's outer walls. Punch us a hole. A small hole, please. Elara, be ready to transport any Vorta you detect. The drones concentrated their attack, their combined firepower quickly breaching the reinforced walls of the central chamber. As alarms blared and emergency force fields flickered to life, Elara's voice rang out. I've got a lock on 3 Vorta life signs. Initiating transport. Goddamn good work. Nolan's excitement breaking his usual brutal matter-of-fact comments. Keep them in the pattern buffer for now. Lexa, status on the remaining Jem'Hadar. Final sweeps in progress, Lexa reported. 91% of Jem'Hadar life signs eliminated. Resistance has crumbled. Nolan allowed himself a grim smile. Excellent. Now for the tricky part. Elara, begin the structural integrity field generation. Lexa, coordinate the drones for the extraction process. What followed was a breathtaking display of technological prowess. Shimmering force fields enveloped sections of the cloning facility as drones and tenders began to detach it from its orbital moorings. Piece by piece, section by section, The massive structure was blinked into the Havoc's hold. Lexa, cover the transfer. Get drones out to our long-range sensor limits. We don't need any surprises. Structural integrity at 92%, Elara reported. Multiple stress fractures detected, primarily in the areas we breached. No critical systems compromised. That'll do, Nolan said, his eyes fixed on the view screen as sections of the facility were each blinked away by the drones. We can repair it later. Let's wrap it up and bring her home. With painstaking precision, the cloning facility was blinked into the Havoc's cavernous hold. Force fields and tractor beams guided and held the sections into place, and a shipbuilding lattice established to hold the parts in a static position. A collective breath seemed to be released on the bridge as the last sections were clamped to their moorings. The operation to capture the cloning facility had gone surprisingly smoothly. Nolan stood on the bridge of the Havoc, a sense of triumph coursing through him as he watched his new prize being secured within the Havoc. "Facility secure, Nolan," Lexa reported, her voice brimming with satisfaction. "Nearly 420,000 Jem'Hadar life signs eliminated, and we've captured 3 Vorta overseers. 420,000. Nolan looked to the sky, reveling in such fantastic death. How many lives did we just save? He thought aloud. Elara standing beside Nolan, her expression a mix of awe and curiosity. "I have to admit, I'm impressed. But Nolan, what exactly do you plan to do with the Jem'Hadar cloning facility?" Nolan's face made his usual one-sided smile. "Let's just say it's going to revolutionize our operations, Elara. Trust me, if I can pull this off, it changes everything." Before Elara could press further, proximity alarms blared across the bridge. Lexa's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple Dominion signatures detected. "It's a massive fleet, at least 3 times the size of our previous encounter." The view screen lit up with the approaching armada. Multiple Dominion battleships, accompanied by swarms of Jem'Hadar fighters, bore down on their position. "And they're coming in hot tea," Elara added. Lexa seemed to stand taller as the excitement filled her, her eyes blazing with the thrill of impending battle. "Nolan, we should stand and fight." She began feathering the drones, firing on ships at the back of the fleet. "Our drones can handle this. We've proven our superiority." Nolan's expression hardened as he assessed the situation. The odds were not in their favor, and he wasn't about to risk losing their hard-won prize. "Negative, Lexa. We're outgunned and outmanned. We need to retreat." "But Nolan," Lexa began, her voice tinged with frustration. Nolan brooking no argument. "Recall all drones immediately. Elara, prepare for an emergency blink. We're getting out of here with our prize intact." Lexa's anger flashed across her face, a look of defiance crossing her features before she complied. "Drones returning. But Nolan, we could win this. We should win this." As the drones, glowing hot from the firefight, blinked back into the Havoc's hold, the first volley of Dominion weapons fire rocked the Havoc. Shields flared under the assault. "Lexa, can you overload the warp engines on those Dominion battle cruisers we captured?" Nolan barked. "I can, Nolan, but use the drones. Blink those 2 ships into the midst of the armada and blow them to smithereens. Elara are ready to jump." Nolan looked over at her, gripping the console as another blast shook the bridge. "Blink drive charged and ready," Elara responded calmly. "Awaiting your command." Nolan took one last look at the approaching Dominion fleet. "Lexa, we've got what we came for. Give them a bloody nose, and we're out of here." With a nod from Lexa, the 2 massive Dominion warships and the light fighters blinked out of the Havoc's hold. Nolan gave the command. "Let's go home, Elara." In a flash of light, the Havoc disappeared, leaving behind the Dominion fleet as the stolen ships detonated with spectacular force, breaking up their formation and forcing ships into each other. Lexa watched through the feed from a drone, a little smile on her face. She would have loved to stay and fight, but watching the chaos they left behind would have to do. Noticing that one of the large battleship's shields had failed, She quickly beamed up the over 1,000 Jem'Hadar aboard and gleefully poured them into a local red dwarf, then dutifully recalling her last drone as ordered. As they reappeared in safe space at the edge of the Delta Quadrant, Nolan allowed himself a small smile. The real work, he knew, was just beginning. As the Havoc settled into a stable orbit around a nondescript planetoid, Nolan turned to his AI companions. Elara, begin full diagnostics on the captured facility. I want to know every nut and bolt on that thing. If the tenders can start making repairs, all the better. Lexa, run defense simulations. I don't want any surprises if the Dominion manages to track us. I have drones in a radial pattern based on our long-range sensors. We're extended far enough out that we can see anyone coming our way. Lexa was always a step ahead. Nolan liked not having to tell her every little thing. His gaze drifted to the holographic representation of the cloning facility, now safely nestled in the Havoc's hold. A plan was forming in his mind, one that might change the face of this war, and perhaps the entire galaxy. "And what will you be doing?" Elara asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Nolan's hard face morphed into a smirk. "Me? I'm going to have a chat with our Vorta guests. It's time we learned exactly how this facility works." As Nolan strode toward the transporter room, his mind raced with possibilities. The capture of the cloning facility was more than just a strategic victory. It was the key to a plan he'd been formulating since he first encountered the Dominion. The transporter room hummed with energy as he entered. "Bring our Vorta guests out of the pattern buffer," he commanded. All three of them. 3 shimmering columns of light materialized, coalescing into the forms of the Vorta overseers. One of them, a female with striking features, stepped forward. Her dark hair was styled in an elaborate updo, framing a face that was both beautiful and alien. Large, expressive violet eyes regarded Nolan with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I am Elara." She wrinkled her nose, her lips pressing together with a quiet, contemplative sound. Her voice carrying the typical Vorta blend of subservience and cunning. "I'm afraid that you have committed a grave offense against the Dominion. The Founders will not." "Spare me the rhetoric," Nolan interrupted, his tone sharp. "You're no longer in Dominion space, and the Founders can't help you here." Kilama's expression flickered, a momentary flash of uncertainty crossing her features before the mask of Vorta composure reasserted itself. "What do you want from us?" Nolan paced slowly in front of the 3 Vorta, studying each in turn. "You're going to tell me everything about that cloning facility. How it works, how to operate it, how to modify it." The second Vorta, a male with a fresh scar running down one cheek, scoffed. "We will die before betraying the Founders." A cold smile played across Nolan's lips. "Easily arranged. But first, let me make something clear." He tapped his comm badge. "Lexa, show our guests what happened to the Jem'Hadar at the facility." A holographic display flickered to life, showing the brutal efficiency of the Jem'Hadar protocol in action. The Vorta watched with flat expressions as soldier after soldier vanished, and the tiny flashes of light as their atoms scattered to the solar winds. "This," Nolan said, his voice low and dangerous, "is what happens to those who stand in my way. Now, you have a choice, cooperate, or—" He gestured to the display. His laugh was devoid of humor. "No, I don't suppose they would. Take a look around you. Do you see any Federation emblems? Any Starfleet uniforms?" He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not Starfleet. I'm something much, much worse." A tense silence fell over the room. Kilana's eyes darted between her fellow Vorta before finally settling on Nolan, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed at odds with her status as a prisoner. "I wish to discuss terms." Nolan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Terms?" Kilana glanced at her fellow Vorta before continuing. "I believe there may be mutual benefit in cooperation. The others disagree, but I see only futility in continued resistance." The male Vorta with the scarred cheek snarled, "Traitor. The Founders will." "The Founders," Nolan interrupted coldly. are not here. Your choices are simple. Cooperate or face the consequences." He turned back to Kilana, finding himself drawn to the intelligence behind her eyes. Or maybe it was her cleavage. "What exactly are you proposing?" Kilana straightened, her chin lifting slightly. "I have extensive knowledge of Dominion operations, beyond just the cloning facility. In exchange for protection and certain considerations, I'm willing to share that knowledge." She glanced over at the other Vorta. Nolan studied her for a long moment, weighing the potential risks and rewards. Finally, he nodded. "We'll discuss specifics later. For now, you'll be moved to more comfortable quarters." He then addressed the other two Vorta. "As for you, I'm afraid your accommodations will be somewhat less pleasant. I hear Klingon hospitality is quite invigorating." The male Vorta's eyes widened in horror. "No, you can't. We demand to be turned over to the Federation." Nolan's smile was cold. "You're in no position to demand anything. Besides, I'm sure General Martok will be delighted with his new guests." Nolan waved his hand, and the protesting Vorta were returned to the void of the pattern buffer. Nolan found his gaze drawn back to Kilana. There was something captivating about her, a blend of strength and vulnerability. He could smell her and feel the heat radiating from her when he stepped close. He wasn't dumb enough to trust her, of course, but she had more than just his eye. "Come," he said, gesturing for her to follow. "We have much to discuss." As Kilana began to speak, Nolan allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The second piece of his grand plan was falling into place. Over the next several hours, Nolan interrogated Kilana gently but relentlessly, extracting every scrap of information about the cloning facility's operations. Elara monitored the proceedings, occasionally interjecting with clarifying questions or data correlations. Lexa maintained the perimeter. By the time Nolan called for a break, his mind was swimming with the intricacies of Dominion cloning technology. He led Kilana back to the bridge. As they walked through the corridors of the Havoc, Nolan couldn't help but notice the grace with which Kilana moved, her every gesture precise and deliberate. It was a stark reminder of the genetic engineering that had shaped her, and yet there was an undeniable humanity in her expressions. "Tell me, Kilana," Nolan began as they entered a more private area of the ship, "what made you decide to cooperate? It can't have been an easy choice." Kilana's gaze met his, her violet eyes searching. "The Vorta are bred for loyalty, it's true, but we're also bred for adaptability. There is nothing stopping me from applying that adaptability to my own survival, is there?" She paused, a flicker of emotion crossing her features. "When I've begun to question certain things, the rigidity of the Dominion structure, the unquestioning obedience demanded of us. Your actions, as barbaric as they've been, have shown me that there are other ways of existing." Nolan nodded slowly, intrigued by her candor. "And what do you hope to gain from this arrangement?" She hesitated, wrinkled her nose, a hint of vulnerability showing through her composed exterior. "Perhaps a chance to understand what it truly means to be an individual, rather than just a tool of the Founders. You're a broken Vorta. If the Founders knew, they would have recycled you," Nolan pushed, testing her response. "Likely," she smoothed her frock. "But I did everything that was expected of me. I was a good scientist, loyal to the Founders. But I saw horrific things come of the Jem'Hadar that I was creating. Loyalty and cruelty don't have to be the same thing." Nolan found himself increasingly drawn to Kilana's quick wit and insightful observations. There was a depth to her that he hadn't expected, a complexity that went beyond her role as a Vorta overseer. Still, he couldn't afford to trust her fully. "You know who I am, right?" Nolan said, his voice thoughtful. "What do you think happens when a 400-year-old man meets a beautiful Vorta woman?" Kilana's smile was almost childlike. "Well, the galaxy may never be the same, will it?" Nolan escorted Kilana to her secured quarters. Once she was safely inside, he made his way to the bridge alone. "Elara, Lexa," he called out as he entered, "I think it's time we discussed the next phase of our plan." The two AI avatars materialized, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Based on what we've learned, Nolan continued, calling up a holographic schematic of the cloning facility, I believe we can modify this technology for our own purposes. But first, we need to get it back to Empire North. Elara shifted her weight from side to side, her expression thoughtful. We'll need to clear at least 3 cargo bays to reassemble the facility properly. It's not a small undertaking. Nolan nodded, his eyes fixed on the schematic. Make it happen. I want our best scientists on this as soon as we're back. He paused, then added firmly, OPSEC is priority. As the plans were set in motion, preparations were underway to transport the cloning facility to Empire North. Elara and Lexa coordinated the complex operation, their artificial minds processing vast amounts of data to ensure the safe relocation of the sensitive equipment. As the Havoc prepared to make the jump back to Empire North, Nolan stood alone on the bridge. The vastness of space stretched out before him, a canvas of infinite possibilities. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the cusp of a new chapter in his long, extraordinary life. With Kilana's knowledge, the captured cloning facility, and his own audacious plans, the balance of power in the quadrant was about to shift dramatically. And at the center of it all stood Nolan Mercer, the primitive passenger, ready to reshape the future of the galaxy. As the Havoc emerged from its blink near Empire North, the hulking black shell pushing into space from nowhere, the bustling space station came into view. Nolan stood on the bridge, surveying the familiar site of his base of operations. The Havoc settled into a stable position behind Empire North, its massive form dwarfing nearby vessels. Nolan initiated the transfer sequence assembled by Elara. The stolen Dominion technology, a sprawling cloning facility, began to dematerialize from the Havoc's impenetrable holds. Simultaneously, within the cleared cargo bays of Empire North, shimmering columns of light heralded the arrival of the purloined technology. Piece by piece, the fruits of their daring raid materialized, ready for study and adaptation. Elara informed Nolan, I've already briefed our science teams. They're eager to begin their analysis. The station buzzed with activity. News of the Havoc's return had spread quickly, and there was an air of excitement among the crew. Nolan led Kilana through the corridor, stopped inside, and tapped his comm badge twice. They rematerialized inside of one of the private quarters, one with no doors. This will be your quarters, Nolan said, gesturing to a comfortable but secure room. You'll have limited access to the station's facilities for now. I trust you understand. Perfectly, Kilana replied, her tone neutral. I expected nothing less. These quarters are lavish, Mr. Mercer. I've never lived in such a place. Her tone both appreciative and facetious, as there was no door. Just double-tap your comm badge to beam out, then tap once and say quarters to beam back in from anywhere on the station. You have access to the promenade if you're hungry, and there's an assortment of food already stocked in the kitchen. Replicators, of course. He pointed toward them. Turning to Kilana, Nolan spoke in a measured tone. You'll be working closely with our scientists. Your knowledge will be crucial in understanding and adapting the facility. Kilana nodded, her expression a mix of anticipation and caution. Of course. I look forward to meeting your people. They said an awkward goodbye. Later, in the main conference room, Nolan gathered his key staff for a debriefing. Elara and Lexa in attendance alongside the assembled team. Ladies and gentlemen, Nolan began, his voice carrying the weight of command, what we've accomplished today marks a turning point in our conflict with the Dominion, but it's very much the beginning on other fronts. He activated a holographic display of the captured cloning facility. This technology gives us an unprecedented opportunity to understand our enemy and potentially turn their own weapons against them. I want round-the-clock analysis and testing. One of the lead scientists, Dr. Evak, a disgraced Vulcan scientist with decades of experience in xenobiology, spoke up. Mr. Mercer, The ethical implications of this technology are significant. What exactly are your intentions? Nolan's gaze swept the room, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. Our primary goal is to understand and potentially disrupt the Dominion's ability to produce Jem'Hadar. However, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm not ruling out the possibility of adapting this technology for our own purposes. The galaxy is changing, and we need to be prepared for any eventuality. A murmur ran through the assembled staff. Nolan could see the mix of excitement and apprehension on their faces. He understood their concerns, but he also knew that sometimes survival required pushing boundaries. I know some of you may have reservations, he continued, but remember why we're here. The Dominion threatens not just the Federation or the Klingon Empire, but the freedom of 2 entire quadrants on this side of the wormhole. We're in a unique position to make a difference, and I intend to use every tool at our disposal. As the meeting concluded and the staff filed out, each with their assigned tasks, Nolan found himself alone with Elara and Lexa. The facility's transfer is at 67% completion, Elara reported. We've encountered some minor structural issues, but nothing our engineering teams can't handle. Nolan nodded, his eyes never leaving the view screen. And our guests? The 2 uncooperative Vorta have been secured in isolation, Lexa chimed in. Good, Nolan murmured, his mind grinding through the possibilities. Once the transfer is complete, I want our top scientists on this around the clock. We need to understand every nuance of this technology. As the last components of the cloning facility disappeared into Empire North's hastily cleared cargo bays, Nolan felt a familiar surge of anticipation. This wasn't just a victory against the Dominion. It was the key to unlocking secrets that could change the course of the war. Elara, I want a comprehensive analysis of the facility's power requirements, turning away from the view screen. Lexa, focus on identifying any unique chemical compounds or biomatter needed for its operation. Leave no stone unturned. The AI companions exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them in the span of microseconds. Nolan, Elara began, her tone curious. What exactly are you planning to do with this information? One side of Nolan's mouth lifted in his usual crooked smile. Let's just say that knowledge is power, Elara. The more we understand about this facility's needs, the better positioned we'll be to act. Lexa nodded, a glint of excitement in her eyes. I see. By tracking the movement of these specific resources, we could potentially locate other Dominion cloning facilities. Among other things, Nolan replied, his voice low and thoughtful. For now, let's focus on gathering as much data as we can. I don't want to leave any loose ends. As the girls set to work, Nolan transported to his private quarters. The familiar surroundings did little to quell the restless energy coursing through him. Bastra. Epilogue. The soft chime of an incoming transmission broke the silence of Nolan's quarters on Empire North. The screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred visage of General Martok, his single eye glaring at Nolan with barely concealed contempt. What do you want, Mercer? Martok growled, his voice dripping with disdain. The Klingon leader had little patience for the enigmatic human who had been a persistent thorn in his side. Nolan leaned back in his chair, a wry smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Please, I come bearing gifts, and this is the reception I get. His expression suddenly hardened and he leaned toward the monitor, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. Today I killed more Jem'Hadar than you will in a lifetime. Show a little respect. The Chancellor's eye narrowed, but not a flicker of emotion passed across his features. Nolan tapped at his console, his tone businesslike once more. I've just sent you a couple of Vorta from a cloning facility in the Gamma Quadrant. Let me know if they have anything interesting to say. He knew the Klingons would extract every drop of information from them, quickly and efficiently. Unlike Starfleet, who would likely set them up in comfortable quarters for the duration of the war. Martok was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and gruff. "Well, I suppose I can let you know if there's anything interesting." Without another word, the screen went dark. Nolan leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk spreading across his face. "That man loves me," he chuckled to himself. "I can feel it.